to Jesus Christ That's Funny with me. I'm Ethan Moore, and that's Pastor Dwayne Black over there.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Nice to see ya.
We're a couple of Jesus Christ fans.
Fans, that's right. Just fans. Jesus Christ fans.
I always say I'm not a Christian. I'm just a fan.
Oh, really?
That's true. But you're a pastor of a church. I guess you have to take the Christian.
I really
moniker.
like him. Yes.
You're a super fan.
I like following him. Yes.
Super fan.
I am super fan.
Okay.
I want to have the dust of my rabbi on me. How about that?
It sounds
It was an old
a little too intimate.
That was an old Hebrew saying. They used to say that you'd follow your rabbi so closely that you would have the dust of your rabbi upon you. It was a blessing.
Now you can follow him on Instagram and you just avoid any contact. You know, it's just digital.
Digital dust.
It's much more hygienic. Yeah. So let's see what's going on, Pastor. How was your week?
Really, really good. Really, really terrific. I got well, and that's a big thing right off the bat. So that worked out nicely. And how was yours?
You got what?
I got well.
You got well. Yeah, we've both been ailing a little.
Yeah,
but,
it's been terrible.
I think I made like 99% recovery. I still had a little cough every once in a while.
I'm probably 80%, there. And but I'm feeling really good. The world looks like a good place.
I guess we know who God favors. I got sick for less time, and I'm already better.
Yeah, haven't you had all sorts of problems, I think?
What's that?
Didn't you have problems? You had something was going on.
I had laryngitis.
That's right.
But that was like.
But for somebody like you.
For about 3, yeah, I know.
That's serious.
You take away the voice.
The voice.
It's not what you want when you're trying to tell jokes on stage every night.
You can't do the stand-up comedy stuff. It's really tough, and that's rough. That's not easy.
No, it was. Yeah. Unfortunately, that only lasted about 2 or 3 days. Was
that because you were making religious jokes, you think?
I may have been, struck dumb. Right. I'm lucky I haven't been struck by lightning by now. It was with the naming of the podcast. Jesus Christ, that's funny. He's like, I didn't think it was that funny. Yeah.
I know. I've had people.
And God smote him. God was always smiting. He was
smoting. I like that.
We never talk about people being. The only time you get smitten these days is like if you're really like a member of the opposite sex, or it could be the same sex, I guess.
Yeah.
When you fall into.
You see somebody and you're just smitten.
Right. Thunderstruck.
Have you ever been that way?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's happened to all of us.
Really?
Well,
what was it like?
If it hasn't happened to all of us, then you're missing out.
Really? What was it like?
When that happens, I don't know. It's tough. It's like a bad thing, in certain ways, but you should experience it.
Does your body change? I mean, do you start to sweat a little bit? You
can. Yeah, I think your heart speeds up a little, and
your eyes dilate.
I think there's a whole lot of early rock and roll songs about it, like Elvis and those type of things.
Yeah.
I think there's a song called "All Shook Up."
That's right. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. You could listen to that. He lists all the symptoms in that song, if I recall correctly.
Really? I'm going to listen to that.
Yeah.
I'll put that on my way home tonight.
That's right. Listen to some old school Elvis. Sun Records.
That's good.
Yeah. Isn't that who it was?
Yeah. I just can't believe that you even
Sam
knew that.
Phillips?
I mean,
yeah. That's old school stuff, like that Outlaw Country. That's even older than the Outlaw Country stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember my parents telling me a little bit about that stuff, but that was about it.
About Elvis?
Yeah, I remember that. That's why I'm so amazed because, you're pretty young. I would think that, how would you know Elvis?
I don't know. I mean, I've watched TV and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. What's funny is when I went to, when I used to teach in Singapore and I taught philosophy and religion and stuff like that there. And I remember every once in a while I would teach like an English class. And one year I had, I was teaching an extra English class to make a little more cash. And I had all these Chinese students from mainland China.
Yeah.
And I was still pretty new at teaching, and I was just and I didn't really know much about, it's like China's sort of mysterious to like Americans, like it's like we think of them as like, well, they're this sort of economic juggernaut.
Right.
And there's all these people over there, and it's very different. It's a very old society and culture. We're very new, a couple hundred years or whatever. So it's like, what's going on over there, and what's their perception of us? So I remember I started asking my students, about like American pop culture to see what they knew.
Right.
And it would be like, and one day like we had some free time, so I just was like putting pictures up on like the projector.
Right.
And I was like, this is the Beatles. Do you guys know who these are? They're like, no.
No.
Yeah. I was like, and this is, it was like all these like sort of people that you would, I don't remember but I kind of went through like kind of pop culture.
Right.
Stuff that was like, worldwide phenomenon kind of stuff, And then Elvis, and it was like 2 people or 3 people knew who Elvis was, and they said, like, he's like the Cat King.
The cat.
Like cool Cat King or something. That was like his, I don't know if that's in Chinese, like that's what he's called, but like I guess he's called the King, and he was a pretty cool
king.
cat.
Yeah, I guess.
So they had like, he was like the Cat King or something.
Cat King. I love it. That's
that was
great,
what this one young lady said. She was like, "Oh yeah, Cat King." I was like, maybe there was like a commercial for,
Oh wait, didn't he have a lot of cats? No, that's Hemingway.
There's a type of cat named after him.
That's right.
With extra little fingers.
What was it like teaching over there?
It was, I don't know. What was it like? You learn a lot from, like I was in a lot of ways I was interested to learn from the students more than I wanted them to learn from me. So maybe things were reversed, but maybe that's the way things should be. I don't know. One thing that was a struggle was like not pop culture. It was just culture. Like trying to explain. Like, so if you're teaching like something like a class on philosophy, then it's Western philosophy.
Right.
So
in a lot of ways, yeah.
Well, that's what this class was. I was teaching a class on like Western like ethics. So it's like Aristotle and Plato and John Stuart Mill,
right,
and stuff like that. And so,
and how did they relate
Immanuel
to that?
Kant, just like a survey. So nothing really deep on any of those thinkers, but they needed to know about each one. The challenge was that they had no context whatsoever for it. So I had to go back to I remember I started teaching Homer, and like Odysseus and stuff like that, like the Odyssey and the Iliad and stuff, because it was like the only way. Because I was like, how else can they understand? It was like, I just started thinking about it. I was like, well, where does all this stuff come from? Well, ultimately it's like sort of the ancient Greeks.
Right, exactly.
And so if I don't teach, and then they kind of knew something about that, because I guess there was some like movies and things like that where they had some of the Greek mythology stuff.
Wow.
So they can kind of touch base with some of that stuff. And then I had to like explain that like originally, in like Western ethics, like your role was the most important thing. So in other words, people aren't defined as good in general, which is what we talk about. Like, nowadays, like, is a good person or something? Yeah. Or like, what's the difference between right and wrong? But back then, when society was dominated by roles, you didn't ask that question in the abstract like that. It would be like, what does it mean to be a good farmer?
Right.
Or what does it mean to be a good king? Or, a good, I don't know, seamstress or something. You know what I mean? Like, you would ask it in terms of a social role or a vocation. And if you could explain that, so something was always good for something,
right?
And then the concept of good gets separated later on. But you have to kind of understand this society where your role is the most important thing, and then you have all these kind of heroic archetypes. And then in the beginning, ethics is kind of trying to emulate those heroic archetypes.
Right. How did they relate to that? I mean, that must have been mind-blowing.
No, I don't think they did. I think I just didn't teach them anything. I think I was terrible at it. I was out of my depth, because it was like, it was like in a survey class. Like, let's catch up on, 4,000 years of 3,000, 4,000 years of Western culture, and it was like, this is not possible, It could have been. It should have been 4 or 5 classes.
Right.
We could do a class on Homer, 2 classes on Homer or something, and then a class on Plato and Aristotle. And then we can talk a little bit about some of the Roman stuff and the Christian stuff.
Right.
And then we can move into medieval and modern ethics or something.
How do you think they would have received that? Going into the Christian stuff and things like that, would that have been received easily, well?
Well, that's another thing about it that was challenging, was that a lot of the ethics, of course, ethics, in terms of what we talk about as ethics, I mean, these guys were Christians a lot of times, right?
Right.
So everyone from, Immanuel Kant to, I don't know, who else am I thinking of? But like a lot of the most important, people like Augustine and, and Aquinas and, so it's like you've got all these people, a lot of them who are major theological and religious figures, and as well as, later become influential in philosophical ethics. So it's like now you have to explain Christianity to them too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't even know how you'd start there.
That's what I'm saying. It was a really almost insurmountable to do it. I ended up like the easier classes to teach were classes like world religions and things like that, because you just kind of do a little survey about this is what, this is a unit on Christianity, and here's some different things that Christians have believed, and here's some approaches to understanding it. And then here's a unit on Buddhism, and so it's just sort of it's a little easier kind of stuff, and pick a religion to write a paper about, and it's things like that. So it's like that's like a way easier kind of thing to do than to have people understand Western philosophy who have no context for it whatsoever.
And the word understand is such an unusual word because. Unless we struggle with something, really digest it, really eat it, that we can really start to understand it. We can, regurgitate back, different lines that people say that, this is what this is and this is what but until you really work through it and try to understand how does that change my life and how does that look in changing. There was a new book out on Caesars, and they were looking at all the different Caesars. And part of it is that Caesars figured out, like Nero didn't.
Oh, you mean the Roman emperors?
Yes.
Yeah.
That they didn't. He didn't. What was he? Didn't.
They say that Nero fiddled while Rome burned.
Right, and that's not true.
He was supposedly making way for some sort of new a complex of temples or houses he wanted to build.
And part of the thing was that.
So he burned it on purpose. That's what the rumor was.
Well, they figured out how to get people to hear different things about them, and push those PR pieces forward. And they accepted whatever they wanted to put forward. So they would put forward an image of this is somebody who kills lots of people. This is somebody who says that the Republic is wrong. And this is somebody. And so whatever they did, it was mainly a lot of PR.
Right.
And the more I heard about this, the more I'm thinking, so it really isn't that far away from some of our political systems that are going on here. That there's a lot of stuff being said that's just PR.
Yeah. I always think the Roman, it's interesting. Yeah. It's really fascinating to think about the Roman Republic and Empire.
It is.
Because it's so, like, clearly those, like the founding fathers here in America were big fans of a lot of those Roman Republicans and Republican Romans and whatnot, and and you can see all the like challenges that the Roman Republic had at the end, where you had all these succession of people like Sulla, and you had the Gracchi, Tiberius Gracchus and those guys, and you had all these guys who would end up kind of seizing extra legal power, and culminating with obviously people like Pompey and Julius Caesar. And then of course Octavian, who becomes the first Roman Empire, the first official Roman emperor. They end up seizing power basically because they end up seizing power because maybe they want power,
right?
Or maybe it's because they're trying to do something good for the state and try to fix all the problems.
Well,
nobody really. It's hard to really suss out those motivations,
right?
Thousands of years later, but they seize power, and a lot of times what they do is they end up keeping their troops hanging outside the city. And things like that, which was totally not allowed to do.
Right.
But they end up breaking. But once you have all the troops there, it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah. What are you going to
say? Yeah. Well, there's a famous quote where Pompey the Great said, "Don't quote laws to men with swords." Because he had his legions there.
Beautiful.
Everyone's like, "You're not supposed to bring these legions into the city." And he's like, "Hey, I got the legions. Don't be telling me what to do." Yeah.
This whole Republic thing is just a conversation anyway. Give me a break, okay?
Yeah, and so it's interesting because you see the attempts I see this parallel where you had the Republican Romans. You know, they're the Roman, did I say Roman Republicans or anyway, the people who were part of the Roman Republic.
Yes.
I'm not talking about like Democrats and Republicans.
Right. No, you're I think it was a
the Republic.
What you meant.
You know,
the Republic.
The Republic, the succession to the Roman kingdom. Right.
Yeah.
Successor to the Roman kingdom. So you have this Republic. And you have the people who had worked for a couple hundreds of years to create this system where it was hard to do things like that, to go into Rome and become an autocratic dictator.
Yeah.
And they had this sort of prohibition against all these different things, like having troops and or like holding the main power for more than a year at a time and things like that. So they had all these systems in place, and then they all get degraded as there's a succession of these kind of crises, right? Like you have these slave rebellions, and you have wars, and all these problems with internal strife.
Right, exactly.
Because Rome has acquired all this land and money.
And how do you manage it? And how do you
split up all the land and money? You've got all these poor people who are starving, and all these rich people at the top who are getting all the money. And so what do you do? You know, so you've got these people who've designed these systems, but then eventually those problems become kind of bigger than the system.
Yeah.
You know, and they can't. It's like this small kind of regional power.
Right.
Wasn't prepared to handle the massive worldwide empire that it kind of all of a sudden found itself holding. Yeah. Wow. And I'm kind of seeing, like, I see a similar parallel with like the founding fathers here in the U.S., where it's like, you know, you can see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it. They loved that stuff, and they were like, well, I think we may have fixed. We see what happened with Sulla and ultimately with Julius Caesar and Pompey and then Augustine, and we want to make something that's truly a republic in America that will really and obviously we're coming from this system of the British Empire.
Right, exactly.
So we want to get away from Imperial Britain, and we want to prevent America from becoming ever into an empire. Mm-hmm. So we're going to create all these systems in place that will stop it. And they did. And just like in the Roman Republic, it worked for a long time. But you wonder these days if some of the events surrounding the United States, and in terms of its role in the world, and its its power in the world, and the things like terrorism and things like internal strife and economic inequality
very similar.
Are going to eventually shift it to this place where someone can step up and seize greater and greater amounts of power. You know.
Right.
And
it seems that way too.
One thing that you learn too, if you look at that era of history, is you see how, like people like Sulla, the conservative dictator who takes power, kind of just before the era of like Julius Caesar, and he takes power in order to actually roll back some of the changes that had allowed people to take power before him, and kind of rule as dictators. So he's kind of like, I'm going to be the last dictator. I'm going to take power. Then I'm going to hand it all back over to the Constitution. It's going to be perfectly legal and constitutional. It's just this one time. Yeah. So he marches on Rome, and he kills everyone. Like he's got this massive terror campaign. He kills everybody, death squads, all that stuff. Like he kills like 50,000 of the most famous Romans, which is crazy. No, 5,000. I'm sorry. He kills 5,000 like aristocratic and politically connected. He kills like 5,000 famous people in an era when that was a huge number of people, you know, and so everyone's terrified of him. He takes power and he's rolls back all these reforms that have been made earlier, so that he takes the Roman Republic back to like 200 years before. Just before there'd been all this craziness happening with like all this unrest,
right? Exactly.
Slave revolts, and then people like Gracchus taking power and all. So he's like, this is going to solve the problem. I'll have this power, and then I'll take it back. Then what happens though is that like people like Julius Caesar are watching this, and all they see is the fact that he was able to seize the power.
Right. Exactly.
And then they say, so what it is that once the executive is able to expand his role to that level, and there's a precedent for it, then it's hard to ever come back from that brink.
Yeah.
And so then I'm always concerned with when you see like successive, presidents in the United States, for example, like, so for people like Nixon and people like, Bush.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then some people say Obama too, who have taken, and I think that's true, who have taken like this successively greater and greater role in terms of enlarging the power of the executive. And it's been because Congress doesn't act, and we have these problems, and extraordinary measures need to be taken against terrorists, and so it's sort of like theoretically for a good cause, and people will sit still for it. But once that happens, then it's hard to go back. It's hard to roll things back to democracy and Republican kind of a real kind of republic and government of the people and things like that.
Do you think we've passed? As capitalists, do you think that we've passed that? That we need to roll it back to a bit more socialistic. I mean, I hear the Pope constantly saying we need to redo the finances of our, we need to distribute the money differently. There needs to be a difference. That the top 1% cannot continue. This just doesn't work. Do you think we've reached a point where we need to make changes?
It's not for me to say. No, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, because I'm sort of kidding, because it's like, well, yeah, I think there's a lot of problems with the way things are right now, but I don't know what the answer is. I have a friend, Chuck Ferran, who I do the podcast, The Game of Love with. And that's another podcast I do.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it's the first one I ever did. It's called The Game of Love. It's about like sort of lifestyle in South Florida and board games. And I always talk about stand-up comedy a little bit. We talk about wine and chess and food and lots of different things. It's interesting. Fantasy football, So it's.
No, really? Did you talk about fantasy?
We talk about that. Yeah, talk about everything.
Please,
so anyway,
anything.
Oh, come on. Now you're missing out, man. He wrote me into it this year. It was a lot of fun. I had fun playing fantasy football.
I can't imagine you.
I know people are always like, "What?" It doesn't seem like
doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it's like
I try to get into
3-syllable words and stuff. I mean, that's just.
No, you see, you're denigrating people that play fantasy football. Nothing wrong with fantasy football.
No. It's not a commandment. Okay.
But anyway, I bring up Chuck Ferran because he's a super smart guy. He's the guy who I met who named this podcast.
Oh right, okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I do. Yeah, well, fantasy football's great.
Yeah, Chuck, Pastor loves you. See,
yeah, you did a great job, man.
He's a good guy, and he and I were talking about this one time, and he was saying how he thought that Christianity was almost like a rebalancing of the inequalities that had happened in the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So like Jesus kind of had to show up at that point in history, because almost as like a virus, or like a genetic or like an evolutionary kind of rebalancing kind of thing. Mm. And he's a Jesus fan, as far as I know. But he was like, no, it's like the Roman Empire. They're basically saying, okay, so with the time of Augustine, it's like the most powerful force on earth, right? And they're like, well, you enjoy those two. You have 3 cookies I see over there, Turkey, or Asia Minor or whatever. We'd like 2.5. You can keep the half cookie and survive on that. That was kind of and so. Eventually, with that kind of inequality and oppression, something had to change it, and there was no military force that could stand to Rome.
No, not at all.
So the Christianity that evolved within the Roman Empire and eventually kind of, took it over from within.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the Roman Catholic Church, was kind of nature's way or God's way or whatever you want to look at it as of rebalancing things and saying there's no military might that can stand, but we will with like softness and peace, we will conquer these like great warriors. Something like that.
And the disciples and the believers could not have traveled around from one place to the other without the roads that the Romans had built. So I mean, there's a tremendous amount these things couldn't have happened without this happening, and this happening.
Right.
And so pretty interesting.
It's like, what did the Romans ever do for us?
Right. I think Monty Python answered that question. Right. Yeah.
Well, the roads. Well, of course, the roads. Roads go without saying.
Wine too.
The aqueduct.
That's it.
There you go. Yeah, you should. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen Life of Brian,
you need to see it.
You got to watch that one. You a fan of that, Pastor?
Oh yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm a big Monty Python fan.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, there are things you and I could probably go on quoting different things, you know?
Well, we won't.
Okay, that's right.
Burden the listener with that. We've already burdened the listener with all this discussion of like obscure Roman politics from
I know at least
2,500 years ago.
I know at least one woman who's going to be enjoying this right now.
Oh, Emily?
Yeah.
Well, we were going to have her on this week, but she had another commitment, so we're going to try to get her on next week. We'll have her on soon, for sure.
And tell me a little bit about her. What is she?
I don't know. She's the nicest lady you could ever meet.
She is.
She's got some insights. She hangs around the church here sometimes.
Yep.
I don't know if she's a member of your church.
No, she isn't, but she brings her kids around every once in a while.
Yeah, she participates in activities and stuff around here. Anyway, she's got a lot to say. She's got a good heart, and Liz a big fan of the podcast. So
she is.
She has a lot. We want to listen to people. We want to have people on air who have something to contribute, and I think she would contribute.
I think she'd be great. I can't wait.
Plus, who wants to hear two dudes sit around and talk? I learned that from my other projects. It's much more interesting if you have
a female.
Yeah, some women talking along with.
You could try to get in touch a little bit more with your feminine side as you go through this.
I'm already way too in touch with that, according to everyone. Everyone makes fun of me. People make fun of me for like being like effeminate or like gay.
I don't. No, you don't.
On my own podcast all the time. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Boy, they're just going after you for no reason. They just you're a handsome.
Well, I said, what's wrong with those things?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being effeminate or gay.
Right.
I mean.
So that just confuses them altogether, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's the ladies seem to like it. I'm non-threatening. That's what I say. That's just a joke. They don't like me either. No, occasionally, but no, I'm not that type.
Have you ever Googled
big burly guy? No.
Why don't women like me?
I don't know how Google would know.
I would.
If I thought Google knew, maybe I would ask.
Could be interesting.
There are some things that Google doesn't know.
What? What would this be?
I mean, there's probably a long list, but I think you can ask Google about facts, but
Siri knows everything. She's got it all.
Yeah, you can ask. I think Siri would know.
Yeah.
What if you asked Siri like a question about like if I believe in Jesus, will I be saved?
Oh, that would be good to ask.
You should ask Siri questions like that.
That's good.
How can I avoid eternal damnation?
Well, I've
she
asked
give you
her
directions.
The purpose of life. I said, "What's the purpose?"
What did she say?
3.
Really?
Yeah, 3.
Did she? Is that a joke?
I guess. I don't know. It was. I thought it was good.
That's like Douglas Adams, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
What's the ultimate answer to the meaning of life? And it was like 84.
84, right?
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or 87. I don't know, some number. And they're like, then they devoted like all these other research. So they had this massive computer that figured out the answer, and then they were like, oh, now we need to know what the question is. So they had to spend more money and devote more resources to finding out the question. I don't know if they ever found it.
So are you getting ready to do any more or any new podcasts? I
am. I'm getting ready to do some shows. I feel like do we what do we cover in this podcast? I don't even know.
Caesar, Rome.
What's
power.
The theme here? I don't even know what I'm going to put on that's the title.
Power and
Chinese
and
students.
How it actually it resembles a lot of the stuff that's going on now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on.
No, that's what I said. It does. And I guess what it makes me think though is just that like there's things are just cyclical, and we're going through like these constant swings throughout history, towards like maybe greater control by attempts to regulate sort of unchecked ambition,
right? And
then times when unchecked personal ambition reigns, and then going back and forth, and and then that's what we talked about on the last week. Like you were saying that like you thought that that the arc of history was long, but it bended toward justice and basically that progress was inevitable. And I was like, no, I don't believe that at all. Because look at all these things. It's like you go back and go forward, and I don't know if it's progress. I think it's
getting better.
You want to believe that, and I hope it is, but I don't believe. I think it's dangerous to say that that it's inevitable.
Mm.
I want to say that we have to work for it.
I do believe we have to work for it. Yeah, I don't think it's just handed to us.
Yeah, so you have to work towards it, and I think what I would but if you have to predict, if I had to predict, I would say that, you know, we may end up in some sort of a similar situation ultimately as the Roman Republic did.
Well,
I think then that what we would be in danger of is the fact that everything's so connected now.
Yes, yeah, it is.
That what happened when Rome kind of finally, you know, collapsed in on itself and fell was there were other areas in the world that were flourishing during that time. You know, places like China, you know, and the Middle East and things like that. So you've got this like flourishing of things like Islamic civilization during that period, for example.
Right, you do.
Yeah,
we seem to have that going on now too, a little bit, don't we?
A flourishing of Islamic civilization.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right word.
Think so?
I wouldn't use the word flourishing. I think they're going through way tougher times than we are right now. They have a crisis, like the crisis in the Muslim world right now makes the crisis within the Republican Party look like, you know, a day at the beach, or what, to use a cliche. It's like nothing. Like the Muslims are going to tear each other apart, just like the Republicans are tearing each other apart, though, because both of those groups right now have serious like man in the mirror moments, like Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Are we going to make this change? What are we going to do? You know, they're at a crossroads, as you can say.
Well, they are at a flux. I don't know if either one of them is very concerned with making a change at this minute in this place. I think it's very complicated. Very confusing.
I think the Republican Party has to decide whether they're going to be the party of Jesus or the party of you know, Wall Street or whatever, you know, like are we the monopoly guy with the money bags, or are we the I don't know, evangelicals or something like that. And it's funny, like you have all the I should have thought of something better to say at the end of that sentence, but I'm just tired today. I'm sorry, Pastor. But you know, it was always funny to me. It struck me as this weird cognitive dissonance, even as a kid growing up in the church, a very conservative church that was pro-Republican American, you know, like the Republican Party, Reagan, all that stuff. It struck me that there was this bizarre connection between these two things that shouldn't be connected, which was that you have the Republicans who say, "Oh, we're all for like business, and you know, like let's get rid of the, you know, we don't want a minimum wage. Let's get rid of welfare and all that." And then you have these Christians who are like, well, we were part of that, and they were saying, "Oh, it's all about the social issues."
Right.
You know, and like, you know, anti-gays and anti-abortion, and I'm like, I don't see how these two things are connected at all.
Yeah, it is bizarre because you run into a situation where you hear people saying that I'm a Christian, but yet I don't care about the social issues of the people of the poor, people that are in need, people that are being marginalized. I really am not concerned about them because I think that capitalism will work and it will grow everything and the world will be a great place. And it's like, well, wait, that's not any Christian doctrine at all.
Right. Right. So I always felt like the Republicans should split into those two camps, because you should have the people who are, you know, whatever we could say, just like Christian or something like that, and they believe in things like, you know, maybe they're
insurance.
Like let's just say we can say they believe in like pro-life.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they want like kind of more things that are maybe some more support for charities and things like that. You know, and they're pro
environment.
Maybe pro environment. But maybe anti-gay, you know, I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be conservative Christian. You know, I'm just saying that, but I don't see how that's connected at all to the people who are like, let's just make more money.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and again, people that are anti-gay, you're kind of saying, wait, what are you judging people? I mean, that goes against everything that you say you're following. You're following this man. You know, this is one of the things that he believes. Where are you going to go with it? You know, you either say, I'm not going to judge, and I believe that people love each other, and it's okay, and this is fine, and they accept it, and they go on. But instead, you have people that, it started with blacks, and it went into, women, and it's now into gays, that there's always this judgment and judgmental attitude that has not anything to do with Christianity.
Yeah, but that's a matter of your theology.
No,
in
it's
other
a
words,
matter of reading the scripture.
Well, see, but there you go. There's plenty.
Jim Wallace.
What's that?
Jim Wallace? He just came out with a new book about the...
Was he like in the Nixon administration or something?
No.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
And he just came out with a book talking about the idea of our original sin. Our original sin is that we've always been a prejudiced nation, and that we need to accept it and acknowledge it and move forward. And that when we start saying...
Embrace our prejudice is what you're saying.
Right, and we are denying the gospel when we start talking about building, walls to keep children of God who happen to speak a different language out of our country.
We shouldn't
denying the gospel.
So we shouldn't embrace our prejudice then.
We need to embrace where we have come from so that we don't.
We need to acknowledge it.
Acknowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, once again, don't bring your liberal politics into the show, Pastor. I say build that wall. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm just what I'm saying though is that's a matter of theology. So like that's what I'm saying is it doesn't make sense for Christians and business people to hang out in the same party because their interests are not aligned. They're not aligned, and the business guys hoodwinked the Christians, and they say every year things like we're going to help you overturn Roe versus Wade, and we're going to help you. You're going to oppress the gays and and all this stuff those are their pet social issues, right? And then they sign on with that every year, and the Democrats are certainly not saying that they're going to do that. So they're like, well, I guess we'll just have to believe the Republicans again, and they never deliver on it. They've been doing it for 40 or 50 years.
Well, no, and that was the thing that I was so interested about the Caesars were that it came up with these like stories or lines that people bought and believed, and they went along with, even though these things weren't true. Things that talked about them playing, the violin as Rome burned and doing this or doing that. That those were just PR pieces. We're going to do this for you. I'm going to take care of this for you. When I get in this position, I'm going to do. And it was just all conversation. It was all talk, and we bought it then, and we buy it now.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. If you're going to get elected, you're going to try to sell a bill of goods, I guess, to someone.
But the thing is, we're selling stuff that we know no one's going to be able to do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's my problem with that stuff. So, but as far as the question about like what's the real Christianity and what should Christians believe, that's what I'm saying. Like that's not the answer. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, the Republicans should split into the people that have a religious perspective and people that have a business perspective. Those are
just a separate split.
And I don't mean that they have a conservative religious perspective or a liberal Christian perspective necessarily.
Right.
I'm just saying the people that are kind of pro-business and pro-economic inequality or pro, however you want to look at that, or pro, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and then the people that are pro-Christian. Because the Christian stuff could be more balanced on environmental stuff, I think. In
like what way? Like,
well,
only poison.
I think that could be a big
lead pipe shouldn't be used in Flint, or what?
No, what I'm saying. That's right. Let's go back. Yeah.
Let's just feed these children lead, okay? Because of the financial. Yeah. See, that's the problem. Is when we split that up and we don't have people that have moral and ethical, deeply built within them that they make decisions for. Then they make decisions like that.
No, you need to split them, because if you don't, then the Christians provide moral cover for the other guys.
Is that what it is?
That's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you get people who say. So you get people who can be elected on a promise about. Okay, so they get endorsed by the Christians, and then they have they're pulling the power of religion into the office.
Yeah,
and then criticizing them, even though you may not. It's like, and you also kind of tend to believe, you can tend to go along with the whole party line. That's what I'm saying. Like you'll go against like the, anti-global warming stuff,
right?
And they'll say that like teaching climate science stuff is like. They'll put it in the same category as like evolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
so like that's what I'm saying. You muddy the waters there, and if you I think that's the problem. And also, once again, they're just tricking Christians into doing this stuff. They're just, the business people are smart. They figured out that they can make this alliance a long time, and now it's crumbling.
And
Donald Trump is the signal of it crumbling, because he's not really, a Christian like type guy. He's more business type guy.
And Stephen Colbert was on last night. He's like, Donald Trump has given me so many great jokes that I could only pray for one other person to give me jokes, and there God delivers Sarah Palin.
Oh, there you go. She endorsed Trump or something. I heard.
Oh, she's stumping for him. She's.
Makes sense. I heard that last night, and I was like, that makes total sense.
It was. I thought, the apocalypse is here. This is it. It's coming.
No, to me that's like a no-brainer. Like they're cut from the same cloth.
They are, and that's what's scary, that they're getting votes. It's
except but she's like one of those sort of cynical Christian type people, because she supposedly believes that Christian stuff, but then she goes along with the business. That's the other thing is too. What allows that alliance to happen is that you have all these cynical sort of quote unquote Christians,
right,
who lead, in terms of the Republican leadership, who will go along with the business guys, and you have all these cynical business guys. So it's like the Christians, they don't really know that there's a theology that says that they should believe that business is great. And the business people are like, we don't believe in this Jesus BS,
we can get them to come along with us and they'll vote.
So it's a deal with the devil, on both sides. It really is, and it should fall apart. Eventually, the coalition will collapse.
That's a very interesting point.
I think that Trump is signifying the collapse of that coalition, or the possible collapse of it. But I think if it happens, that's good about it is that it allows the Christians to get all together and get maybe under a bigger tent. What I'm saying is, you don't need to make things like climate science a political issue, unless you're allying yourself with business people.
Right.
So in other words, if there's that split, and you have let's say you have conservative Christians and liberal Christians, who can now come together on one side on certain things. Something like climate science doesn't need to be that. They may agree to disagree on things like abortion and gay rights, but they could agree on things like climate science and feeding the poor, reducing inequality. So I think there's a real place in there for a kind of morally conscious political movement that doesn't need to be aligned with business or with kind of traditional humanistic, kind of values which you find in the on the liberal side or the Democratic side.
Yeah, and it happens. I mean, within our Presbyterian Church, we split last year when we started allowing the ordination of gay and lesbian pastors. That was a big deal, and a tremendous amount of our brothers and sisters, the whole church just left. They said, we don't want any part of this denomination. And you said to them, you don't have to hire somebody who isn't, straight. You have the ability to choose that. So, nope, we don't want anything to do with this. This is a point and a part that we will split on. And we lost a lot of churches. Within our presbytery, we lost close to 20 churches, 15 churches.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wow. Are those apostate churches now?
They have gone to a very conservative
But I mean,
theology.
is that the term?
Yes, pretty much.
Or are you guys the apostates? It depends on who you ask.
They've gone back even to the point of not allowing women to be ministers. That whole group of evangelistic Presbyterian churches have gone back to that point. Sad.
Do they allow women drivers?
I think it's barefoot and pregnant is what they look for.
Okay, because I think I'm going to join with that one.
Do you like that?
No, not really. But I don't know. I think that the gay stuff it's always funny how people line up on that. But
well, how do you line up on that?
I don't care.
You don't care?
I mean, it's funny, right? It's like that's the thing about that's actually a funny thing about like gay rights. It's like, remember when the gay marriage thing passed right last year?
Yeah.
And everyone put on Facebook their rainbow flags.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I switched it too. And then it's like you have all these gay people who are congratulating their straight friends and being like, "Oh, thank you so much," And I'm like, I don't care. Thanks for you literally congratulated me for like not caring. And I think that gay people should be careful about, congratulating their straight friends for not caring about them. The next move is going to be like, burn them all. I don't care. Yeah, I don't.
See, that scares me that you don't care.
I'm kind of kidding about not caring.
I hope so.
But it is funny how it's like, no, it doesn't affect me.
Worries me.
Well, it's like that's like the bar, it's like because if you do care in the other direction, then it's obviously it's not, it doesn't go to a good place. Because now you're like, oh yeah, I think we have to stop this. And that becomes this passionate thing for people.
I think anytime you see bigotry, its head poke through, you have to do something about it.
Hey, Caligula married his sister, and he made a horse a senator. So,
I love that. But you know what? The part of the thing about the Caesars were saying that he probably didn't make the horse, but that was just conversation. It was great PR, and he put it out there, and it went.
It's pretty funny.
It went, just everywhere. It went viral in that time.
I'd vote for, Senator Ed.
Yeah.
I think we should have some.
This Republican
they do a better job.
Ridiculous. I can even make my horse a senator.
Right. It's like
that was great.
The Senate would then literally be taking a shit on the Constitution. All right. Anyway.
It's more true than we want to think.
It's happening right now. No, I mentioned the Muslim world too a minute ago.
You did,
and it just occurred to me as I was sitting here that you were talking about the sort of theological differences in Christianity, and so you say, oh, I don't believe it, well, they're reading the Bible wrong if they think that Jesus disapproves of gay rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, well, my reading, as someone who studied theology would probably tend to agree with yours. But it is a matter of theological debate, let's say. So it's something to kind of be worked out among the co-religionists, I suppose, something that's maybe better worked out among, in theological circles than in political circles in a lot of ways. And but it will be worked out in both, I guess. And the thing about the Muslims, I said they're facing this greater challenge than even the Republican Party, and I think the stakes are higher in some ways. And I think that is also this theological struggle that's happening on that side of things, because they are trying. You have, I guess, what's happening now in the Muslim world is you have this debate between the people who are more or less more cosmopolitan, and want to have a Muslim, an Islam that is compatible with the modern world. And then you have other people who say that is basically like, apostasy, and that is heresy.
Right.
And we need to go back. We need a more conservative view. And if just as in the past, things should be resolved with violent means in order to achieve that aim. So that's one of those things that's going to have consequences for people all over the world, depending on the outcome of that struggle.
And in my theology, I just don't believe God is dragging people back. I think God is dragging people forward into a better humanity. That seems to be this. Well, we talked about this arc. That's all I see happening. I see God continuing to pull us forward to being, a group of people that love and care and try to understand, and we're working. We're getting better at it. We really are.
Well, I know very little about Muslim theology, and I know I don't believe in the inevitable progress. But I will tell you that I have a dog in the fight, which is like the same thing I said before. Like I think.
What is your dog then?
My dog in the fight is that I think the human race is a good idea, and I think it's something worth fighting for, and I think that ultimately where we should be going is we should be going to explore other planets and things like that.
Right.
And so, when you have, things like the internet, and that's bringing people together, and you have things like let's say to some extent capitalism that allows people to connect together and creates this abundance of resources, and you have things like but you also have things like these scientific progress and
Right.
and things that are impelling people towards pushing the boundaries of exploration, and everything from exploring the new world and things like that to getting off the planet and exploring going to the moon and going to Mars and these kind of projects. Like these are these are all moving in that direction.
Right.
And that to me, that's a good direction, because the way I look at it is that the Earth has a finite amount of resources,
Right.
and so eventually, if the human race or the successor to the human race genetically or evolutionarily will have to move on, and so then hopefully we can colonize planets in other parts of space, and then when I see people that want to do things like cut the space program or cut scientific research or encourage economic inequality that creates strife and war, or blow up people that want to like blow up Wikipedia or destroy the internet, which is what some of these people want to do, so it's like, then I'm just like, well, that's against that project. Those are, those are forces moving in the opposite direction. So I'm against them, So I'm against people that want to pit us against one another, and I'm against people that want to take us back technologically and sort of progress wise, overall.
And I think it's our understanding of God is this progressive revelation. And that is that we are constantly moving forward in our understanding of God. And then there are people that want to bring you back to some old understanding of God and say, this is the way it should be.
Right.
And you're going, well, no. I believe this is moving forward constantly with this truly a progressive revelation of understanding.
Okay. Do you think it's moving toward a point?
It seems to be moving.
Is that's a teleological thing?
That it's going to get to a certain point and that's it, and we are done.
Yeah, we achieve a oneness or unity, I think we the kingdom of heaven.
Well, I would think that we achieve.
Is there an end of history?
Of heaven, yeah. No, not that I don't see that. I think that we continue to believe this idea that there's a beginning and an end to everything.
Right.
And it's because we only see things in this kind of one level. I think that there are much more beginnings and ends to our lives and to where we are and who we are and what we're involved in. And again, think that we continue to, I continue every day to understand God in different and deeper ways.
Right.
And I would never want to just say, well, I got there, I'm done. God's this. Nope. Just doesn't work that way.
Well, I like that idea. So it's we're constantly moving.
Progressive revelation. How do you like that? Great.
I think we're constantly moving.
Yeah.
But are we moving forward?
I hope so.
We hope so, and I have that hope too. So I think that's where we're aligned. Wow, this is like the supersized episode.
It is. It's good. Really good.
So this is exciting for our listeners. They can hear us yak on and on. They can fold all the laundry they have.
That's.
So we'll stop it there. But Pastor, do you want to promote anything or
just
encourage people to do something?
If anybody would like to know anything about our church, it's the Sanctuary Church, FTL.org, and you can come on and see all what we're about and who we are, and all of our different views of the way God is working in this world.
All right. And
what are you doing?
I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'm just going to say, I'm doing some comedy shows in February. I've got a lot more episodes of Sex on Kava coming out.
Wait, did you invite me to do stand-up with you?
You can come and do stand-up.
I wear my collar and do stand-up?
You should wear your clerical collar.
Okay.
Yeah, your dickie.
Excuse me?
You said it's called a dickie.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And you said it was funny. This is the pastor's joke. You said it's a little funny when I asked my wife, "Where's my dickie?" I said that is funny.
Well, that's the white part of your collar when you wear a collar. That is very funny.
If it was the black part, would it be bigger? Oh, see, that's like a cheap, nightclub joke.
That was good.
All right, so we'll stop it there. Well, let me give my website out. So check out ethanmorecomedy.com, And you can find out about the latest episodes of Sex on Kava. You can find out about the stand-up shows I've got coming up in February. Lots of stuff. So,
and if I want to do
check that out.
A podcast, can I contact you?
Yeah, you can do an episode.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
we'll get you on. We'll get you
good.
on Sex on Kava for
Okay.
sure.
You got it.
It'll be fascinating. You got to wear the collar though.
I will.
Yeah. All right. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Go ahead and write us if you want to talk to us. It's JesusChristThat'sFunny@gmail.com. So we hope to hear from you.
It'd be great.
And